Hey, good morning, painters. You want to know how to paint trees for beginners? Hey, and I'll even throw in a fourth bonus tip if you stay tuned right to the end. So you're struggling with plein air painting trees and could use some helpful techniques. Well, in this video, I'm going to give you 3 easy and actionable tips to paint better trees on plein air, regardless of your style. Use these techniques I'm about to show you on your next painting and you'll start making some beautiful paintings. Oh, and don't forget to stick around for my controversial tip number 4. Hey, let's plein air paint. Crud muffins. Guys, I'm sure it was an honest mistake, but you forgot my fan brushes. I mean, I don't paint trees without a fan brush here. Also, I don't have my water brush. You know, the brush that's shaped like a wave. I don't have that here. Again, I apologize. I mean, who do you think I am? Andrew Tischler, where I can pump out a wave magically, photographically, without even looking? No. Okay. Somebody stop this madness here. Okay, let's get serious. This video is going to be short but sweet, so don't skip around too much or you'll miss out. Hey, let's zoom in here for palette view and some color mixing, where I'm going to start with the color that I start every painting with, my darkest dark, which is that gargantuous tree to my left, in particular the tree trunk of that tree. So I use alizarin crimson and some phthalo blue to make a nice colorful black, but I don't want too many details on this tree. I want the viewer's eye to go past this tree right away and down the river into the painting. Next, I'm going to mix up the darks in the evergreen forest below across the river closest to me. The photo that you're looking at was taken later in the day than what I'm actually seeing and mixing right now. Hey, the sun moves quick in the mountains, what can I say? But that's the alpenglow sunset colors that I'm going to end up with, hopefully, and try to nail toward the end of the day here. But what you see me mixing up now is the halftone on the trees, the halftone color, and I'll tell you what that is in a minute. And then last, I'm going to mix up the light color on the right side of the trees. Sun is coming right to left. What I used to mix the halftone was cad yellow medium and ultramarine blue and just a bit of red in there. I think it was alizarin crimson or cad red light would work. So if you're watching closely, I'm pretty much touching every single color at the top of my palette here to try to get that light color on the right side of the trees. Sometimes you have to search, you have to observe and look and see and search. It's a warm greenish gray. It's not, the temptation is just to dip into cad yellow medium and a little blue and make a nice bright green, but it's not that color if you look closely. That color photo right there by my hand, that is the far off distant mountain, the one behind the green dark forest, and it's cobalt blue, titanium white, and a bit of permanent rose. I'll talk more about that piece in a second when we go up to the canvas, but you know, somebody asked a famous painter, Richard Schmid, one time, why do you take so long to mix your colors? And he said, because I only want to do it once. I always thought that was a funny quote, you know. Don't feel bad about yourself if you're having to, adjust and go up and down in color and warm and cool. Just get it right. Just take your time and get it right. But ultimately, get that color up on the canvas and get it on there and compare it to other colors around it, and then you'll be able to dial it in. So yeah, as I mix up this river color, later in the painting, you'll see that I do decide to chase the warmer, more vibrant alpenglow lights on the trees. But so this river color, I compare it to the darkest dark in the tree closest to me on the left. I compare it to the other trees, and that really helps me make an assessment of the value of the river to begin with. How dark or light is it? And now I'm just trying to dial in the right color. So that forest furthest from me behind the dark mountain, I got to really dial in the right temperature, the right value, so that people can get the sense of that I'm looking down the river and those are further away. So I use some alizarin crimson, I use some cerulean blue, and at the very end there, I put in some orange to desaturate it. You want to make that a lower value and a cooler temperature. I'm about to get into tip number 1 here, but this is really important as I mix up a snow color here. The colors and temperatures surrounding the trees are very, very important. They will help you dial in the correct values and temperatures of your trees. So don't just paint the trees in isolation by themselves. Don't paint them first without any regard to what is surrounding them. So constantly be looking out in the landscape and scanning. How does the snow compare to other colors? What is the value of the snow compared to the value of these trees I'm painting right now? That kind of thing. So for this piece, like I said, I mixed up some little ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, permanent rose, and I put a little bit of orange, cad orange in there to take out the saturation, the vibrancy of it, the brightness of those greens. And I've got some yellow ochre in there at times, and so I'm really not over mixing with my brush either. I'm just I'm using the same puddle, but I'm just not over mixing, if you know what I mean. And I just do a brush stroke like that, just to kind of show the impression of some dead aspen trees up there on the ridge. Not too much detail. Well, hey, if we haven't met yet, I'm Terry with Learning Plein Air, and this channel is all about plein air demos and tutorials just like this one. So if this interests you and you're trying to learn and get better, go ahead and hit the subscribe button right now. Give me a thumbs up if you're liking this video. Thanks. Close in value. Those two are close in value. The violet color and the beige aspen, dead aspen color. Don't want to have too much contrast in the back. Well, all right, into tip number one. Here we go. Finally, thanks for your patience. I really feel like color mixing is very, very important for beginners. So thanks for sticking with me through that. So see those trees down there across from the river that are in light and shade? So here's tip number one. Keep the values of the shadow and light sides of the tree somewhat close, or the tree, it won't look realistic unless you're painting at sunrise or sunset, when there are extreme contrasts between light and shadow. We see the light and shadow on a tree as polar opposites, or more extreme than it actually is. But in reality, trees are darker than they appear, even the light side of the tree. And you want to keep that contrast between the tree and the sky, so you can't make it too light on that one side. And so the two values of the light and shadow. They're not that far apart, not as far apart as we think. So gray them down a bit. Add some alizarin crimson or some cad orange or cad red light, more than you think you need, and on your palette, because when you look at your mixture, it'll actually be a kind of a greenish mixture that'll tend toward cool or warm depending on which side of the tree you're painting. But it's okay. Get it up on the canvas, and like I said before, once you get that color up on the canvas and you can compare it to the surrounding neighboring colors, it's going to look correct. And so don't make those two sides of the tree too extreme. Like, don't go like cad yellow medium and ultramarine blue and just, on the light side of the tree, just blast it with that greenish yellowish look, unless you're seeing that, at sunset or early in the morning. All right, my plein air friends, tip number two, here we go. You need to include the halftone if you want your trees to appear realistic and not look amateur. So there are three parts to a tree that you want to paint, at least those trees that are close to you. That's the light, the shadow, and the halftone. The halftone is, if you look at these trees across from the river that I'm painting, the right side of the tree is the light side, and that's just washed out, complete washed out color right now. It'll get warmer, and I'm going to paint that when sunset approaches here. But in the middle of the tree, before the light turns and washes over the tree into the shadow, there's a portion of the tree that's called the halftone. And that's the actual color of those evergreen trees without too much shadow overtaking it and without all that whitewashed light overtaking it. So it's the actual real color of the tree at this moment in time, at this hour in the afternoon. And so if you want to have realistic trees, you got to include the halftone. And many beginner plein air artists, they have no idea what a halftone is, and therefore they're really just not able to paint great looking trees. So if you want to get ahead of the crowd, just understand what a halftone is and try to include some of that color in your trees. And if you want to learn more about this in depth, watch my other video that I'm going to suggest at the end of this video, because I go way more in depth about it. And even if you've seen that video before, you need to watch it about 5 times. It's got a lot of good information on light and how light washes over objects. And so for me, I recommend painting these 3 elements of light in the foreground trees only. So only the trees that are closest to me, like those ones across from the river and the ones on the left here, that big tree that I'm including. Because when you get trees that are off in the distance, you're not going to want to show the halftone, because you don't want the eye to zoom into those trees and see every aspect of those distant trees. And so again, those trees in the middle ground and the background, they should have very little definition. And therefore they're not going to have the halftone. Remember that piece that I was mixing up for you in the beginning of the video here, the far off distant piece behind the dark mountain? I'm not going to show the halftone in that piece. That's why it was violet, because of atmospheric perspective. And so those pieces should be described only by shape, value, and temperature, with no edge work. Okay, we're moving. Tip number 3, here we go. And hey, if you're getting some value out of this video, would you kindly hit the like button, the thumbs up button for me, or drop me a comment, or both. It really helps YouTube push this video out to those who really need to see it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you watching. All right, here we go. So tip number 3, focus on design, not leaves. So my suggestion is focus on the simple gesture of a tree. So before you start painting every branch and every leaf, at first just look at it as a shape, a simple shape. No light, no shadow, kind of like a silhouette or a black construction paper cutout. You know, which way is that tree leaning? Describe it. Where does it puff out? You know, the canopy of the tree. Show that. How is the canopy shaped on different sides? Catch that impression. As opposed to every single leaf and every single branch. You know, these evergreen trees, they're kind of like upside down ice cream cones. They're kind of a triangle shape, but they don't all grow the same. And even in this painting, I'm guilty of making some of them just kind of all the same. And so I'm telling you to avoid that and to try to just catch the natural gesture of the tree and see it as a simple, large shape. It can be overwhelming to think you have to paint every single leaf. You know, if you're a realist, go for it. But if you're more my kind of painterly, impressionistic style, this is how I do it. I like to try to keep things very abstract and very simple, but well designed up until the end of the painting, the very end. Put a few hints of leaves or branches in there, you know, but let the viewer's eye find the rest. Their brains will fill in the gaps, and they'll know it's a tree. And that won't be dependent on the number of leaves that you paint or the number of branches. So don't overbranch it. It will look overdone for sure. And along those lines, you know, not just for this painting, but for every painting, something that I'm trying to tell myself is don't let your brush touch the canvas unless you have a specific plan for that stroke. I mean, as artists, we want to paint. We want to put our brush on the canvas, but sometimes, you know, you can over-noodle it and detail it to death. And so my best paintings are when I don't do that. So save the veins in the leaves, if you know what I mean, those little lines in the leaves and the branches for the very end of the painting. And, you know, if you know what I mean, like, don't put them in at all is what I'm trying to say. You know, less is more, unless, of course, you're a realist. And then paint every leaf. Go for it, you know. But for me, you know, my best paintings are done when I keep the painting abstract and loose until about the last 10 to 20%. And then a couple little swooshes of leaves above the tree to show the direction of the tree, a couple branches here and there, and boom, you've got your tree. Okay, so a quick close-up and critique. You know, I really should have left this painting alone at the 12-minute, 20-second-ish mark. Go back and rewind it and look at it then, because I should have just walked right away. And that's why I mentioned, you know, over-noodling and over-detailing. I had to scrape this part of the big tree on the left off, those crazy wild branches. Not sure what I was thinking there, so I scraped that off. And I'll show you the finished painting here in a few seconds. No problem, just a few strokes and we can fix everything and bring it back together. Well, as promised, here is controversial tip number 4. Don't use a fan brush or a, air quotes, tree brush. Your trees and your paintings will all start to look the same. They'll look predictable. They'll lack authenticity and originality. If you use the correct color value and temperature and some decisive brush strokes, it will look like a tree. Let's remember that the brush doesn't make the tree, you make the tree. You've heard me say it before, but lest you forget and fall into bad habits, like I do sometimes, don't paint trees or leaves, paint shapes and colors. I know, I'm sorry, Bob Ross fans, you just can't take the fan brush out plein air painting. This tip is for plein air painters who want to create a memory, a mood, and an impression, and paint what they see. You can still use a fan brush. I'm not, don't judge. Just keep it in the studio.
Coincidentally, if you love this painting, it is for sale. As I said, my contact information is in the description below. Well, if you got some value out of this video, the next logical video that you should watch is Before You Oil Paint Trees, Know This. I'll put it right up here on the screen in a second. You can click on it and go there right away. But I discuss more in depth the 7 elements of light and shadow when you're painting trees. You gotta see that video. So I will see you over there next, okay? Hey, God bless you guys. Thanks for watching. Take care. See you up in the mountains.